Welcome back. In this final segment, I just want to give you some of my background and experience as a home inspector for almost 25 years so that you can have some of that information, from the beginning or from wherever you're at in your career. As a home inspector, I realized one day that you actually have a great solution for radon that's already been required in some newer homes. And I think there's going to be some EPA findings that newer homes generally have less radon, and they might attribute it to tighter windows or whatever. But from my home inspector / engineer background, here's what I believe is the primary reason. And you wouldn't normally think of this, but it's the combustion air source inside your furnace and water heater room. That combustion air source is going to replace any air that's trying to leave the house. Whether it be from your furnace and water heater, whether it be from the clothes dryer, that is a big old 8-inch diameter hole that's just bringing in outside air and preventing the house from becoming a vacuum. So that is going to be huge, because in these newer homes that have combustion air, you're not going to have the radon issues. Now, if you choose to believe after this training that higher radon levels might be more healthy, please don't cover the combustion air up, because that's there for another reason. That would also be a problem. But yeah, that combustion air source can be very helpful in combating a radon problem. And I doubt that anybody else will ever tell you that. I'd mentioned earlier the story I had about radiation, not radon, but radiation being spilled on the floor. And so be aware that not all radiation is radon. Similar story that I have is I did an inspection for an airline pilot who was very concerned about radon, and I told him some of the information that I have fed you in this course, and he still was very insistent that I do the test, and of course I'm always very willing to do a test. But I certainly got his eyebrows raised when I told him that a single cross-country flight can give you as much radiation dose, not radon dose, but radiation dose, because you're up, closer where the air hasn't filtered out some of the radiation from the sun. So that single cross-country flight can give you as much radiation dose as living in a house at 10 picocuries per liter for a year. And all of a sudden, this guy started wondering if he was wanting to continue to be an airline pilot, because he knew that, I don't know what his schedule was, maybe twice a week, he was up in the air flying around amid all this radiation. And he knows that his radiation dose is going to be much greater than the next person, and now he's wondering if he was going to get cancer from this radiation. Of course, there are no studies that I am aware of among airline pilots to determine if they get more cancers, but that would be an interesting study to do. Another thing that I'd mentioned earlier that's probably worth mentioning again is the whole concept that radon follows money. And it's good to keep that one in mind, because money houses are going to be in the foothills, they're going to be up in the mountains, they're going to be in the river bottom areas. And in all these areas, you're going to have more minerals, more large gravel, perhaps more granite, easier pathway for radon to get from its point of origin into the house. And so be aware of that. If you got a standard 1,500 square foot home down in the valley without a lot of basement, it may have less risk. You don't want to say it's not going to have a problem, because you never know until you test, but it will have less risk. Another thing I would have you be aware of that and these are little tidbits that I gathered as a radiation engineer back when I did that, is that there are very common items that are high enough in radiation that they actually qualify for being disposed of as hazardous waste, radiation waste. One of those items is Brazil nuts, something that we all eat. I don't want to say regularly, but something we have all eaten. Brazil nuts naturally carry enough radiation with them that if they were found in the industrial environment and measured and thrown away properly, as defined by EPA, then those would actually have to be disposed of as radioactive waste. Another one is lantern mantles. Those things, we used to put a number of lantern mantles in a canister and actually use those to calibrate our Geiger counters. Lantern mantles actually can be highly radioactive. I don't want to say highly because highly can mean anything, but they are more radioactive than other things that you see. So lantern mantles, use that one for example. I mentioned the cross-country flights, and I've mentioned my good friend Sue, who had the house that was at 4.2, and I went in there like I'd mentioned and took care of that house for $4 worth of caulk. So bottom line, if you run into a home that is found to have radon and it's just barely above the 4.0 threshold, in many cases the seller or a handyman can bring that number down by some fairly simple fixes, just by doing some better sealing in the house. And you can try that before you do the $1,500 fix that is called subslab mitigation. It has been a pleasure hanging with you, even though I can't see you directly. I hope that I have given you value that you can in turn use to pass on to your clients, protect your buyers and protect your sellers, and help them to spend money in ways that are, I want to say, more intelligent. You know, we all want to feel safe and know that we're protecting our families, and whether that means protecting them from radon or carbon monoxide or asbestos, or from the stove and oven tipping over, or just driving safely on the road. You know, we all want to be as safe as reasonably possible. Hopefully I've made you a better realtor.